Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up show time with Liverpool taking on League One side Lincoln City in League Cup third round action on Thursday night. And it's a competition that I think we may have slightly higher designs on progressing in than we maybe did in recent years. Since Jurgen Klopp arrived, he's tended to push the domestic cups to one side, and understandably so, given the fact that we won the Premier League last year for the first time in 30 years, and the year before that we won the Champions League, only the sixth time we'd ever won it in our history. So we've certainly been justified in the way we have prioritised competitions. But now that we've got those two out the way and we've got the two most important pieces of silverware back in the club cabinet, thanks to Jurgen Klopp and his fantastic Liverpool squad, I get the feeling that this season and over the coming season as well, we may actually start to have a little bit of a rethink about how we approach the domestic cups. And that is also, I think, down to the way the squad has now been developed. It's something that Pep Lijnders touched on in his press conference today. He took it on instead of Jurgen Klopp, which maybe suggests that Jurgen is still a little bit sceptical of how many resources he wants to put into this competition. But it's also understandable that he wants to give Lijnders a bit of time in front of the media, given that there is this ongoing narrative of whether or not Pep Lijnders could maybe replace Jurgen Klopp in 4 years' time when Klopp's contract runs out, or maybe a little bit later should Klopp choose to sign an extension. But he certainly seems to value Lijnders a lot, and Lijnders seems a very important part of coaching the way Liverpool play. He always touches upon how important pressing is to him as part of the team's identity in these press conferences, and today was no different. So it's no surprise maybe that Jurgen Klopp wants to give him a little bit of time in front of the media to dip his feet into the water and see how good he is at that side of the job. But he did take the press conference today and he talked about how the squad has progressed to a stage where it feels like it is now able to compete on maybe more fronts than it was able to compete on in the past. And one thing that he did really touch upon was how players have gone from just being talent in the squad to being important members of it, to actually fulfilling a position within it that can be utilised throughout the season. You think about players like Harvey Elliott, Nico Williams, Curtis Jones, lads who maybe 1 or 2 years ago you looked at and thought they're clearly fantastic footballers. They definitely have a future at Liverpool Football Club, but their talent is slightly supersedes their actual ability to play games for the first team, and it feels like that isn't the case anymore. We've seen Nico Williams and Curtis Jones on a regular basis in the Premier League. Harvey Elliott has started to burst onto the scene as well. He had a fantastic match in pre-season against Blackpool, and I would certainly not be surprised if Liverpool look to help him kick on this season and give him a little bit more game time. So those are players who maybe we couldn't necessarily rely on for these League Cup matches in the past, and we would have to maybe call upon fringe players and bench players from the first team, whereas now we can look at them and say actually they've got the experience, they've got the quality to back up the talent we knew they already had. That means we can throw them into first team matches against lower league opposition, and not only should they be able to match the quality of the opposition, they should be better than them. You look at someone like Curtis Jones, he's played Premier League football, he's played against some of the best sides in the country. He should not be afraid of coming up against Lincoln. He should be looking at that Lincoln side and thinking he's got the absolute beating of them. Same with Nico Williams as well, and I know Harvey Elliott is a little bit further behind in his development. He's younger than the pair of them, and he maybe hasn't had quite so many games, certainly not at a Premier League level, but we've all seen what Harvey Elliott can do, and he absolutely tore apart Blackpool in pre-season, and they are another League One side. Obviously, there's a huge diversity of quality of teams in that league, but the point still stands that Harvey Elliott, this is a level that we now know he can compete at. So I think Liverpool are in a really, really good position now, especially with how the competition has slightly been modified. There's only one leg for the semi-finals, which means to get to the final at Wembley, you only need to win 4 games from this stage, the third round stage. So if Liverpool can just get a reasonably favourable draw, I know the fourth round doesn't look great. If we should progress, we'll either get Arsenal or Leicester, which could be a little bit of a difficult tie. But beyond that, if the draw favours us a little bit, if injuries favour us a little bit, if the fixture list seems to fall quite kindly in terms of what games surround the League Cup matches and stuff like that, then there is no reason why Liverpool can't at least push to get to the semi-finals. We got to the quarters last year and we were only really undone because of that scheduling conflict where we had to play the kids against Aston Villa because the first team was being flown out to the Club World Cup. So there is a huge, huge opportunity here for Liverpool to get their hands on more silverware, and the club is really now starting to build up momentum in terms of creating a winning mentality, in terms of getting this feeling where you need to just be winning trophies every season. That's what Liverpool should be doing now. We've got the Champions League, we've got the Premier League, we've got all those monkeys off our back. We've now got the squad and the staff to compete on multiple levels, and any trophyless season from now until, when the Jurgen Klopp era eventually ends, should probably be considered a disappointment. So every single opportunity to get our hands on one of those shiny things at the end of the season should be valued very, very highly. And of course, given the way the season pans out as well with the fixture congestion, I'm sure we are going to rotate, not just in these competitions, but in the Premier League and the Champions League as well. And of course, the FA Cup when it comes to that later stage of the season. That is just the nature of the beast now, with that month that's been chopped out and the fact that the players are basically going to be playing weekend, midweek. I know in the past, Liverpool have thrived on that, certainly in the latter stage of the season when you get to the Premier League run-in and the Champions League run-in at the same time. We did so well with that in the 2018-19 season. We just kind of got the ball rolling and it created this snowball effect. But all the way through a season, you're guaranteed to pick up injuries if you just try and keep playing the same players in the same way week in, week out, and midweeks as well. So there will be rotation not just in these games, but in the Premier League as well. So those players that are maybe going to be put into this side, I'm expecting not the first team. I'm still expecting players that we didn't see in the game against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge on Sunday, but they can quite easily stake a claim to get into Jurgen Klopp's plans in the so-called bigger games. You know, if Diogo Jota puts in a fantastic performance against Lincoln and bags a couple of goals, if Kostas Tsimikas shows that he's a more than capable backup for Andrew Robertson, then these players can start looking at a little bit more game time, not just in the Cups, but in the League and European matches as well. So there's a huge motivation for the lads here. They're going into this game knowing that they're not just fighting for a place in the next round, they're fighting for their future places in that Liverpool squad, and that should hopefully give them that push to make them perform to their absolute best level, because I'm sure if we do, then we should probably beat Lincoln City. Pep Lijnders touched on a little bit on how he expected them to set up tactically in his press conference. He said that he's expecting them to defend deep. There's no real surprises there. But it's interesting that he said he thinks they're going to counter-attack and do so in wide areas as well. Because one thing that I was thinking when I was thinking about how Liverpool are actually going to line up with the starting 11 in this game, and I'll come on to the exact players that I think are going to be part of that later on in the video, but height was a concern for me because, of course, you've got to watch out for maybe one of those lower league teams. They will probably look to use strength and height. They'll try and use long balls to get it up quickly, and the last thing you want is a midfield full of lads who are like 5'6", 5'7". If they're going to be trying to hoof it forward to a striker who's then going to want to come deep, win knockdowns for wingers and stuff like that. But by the sounds of it, they're going to look and attack through pace, through the wide areas, which kind of suits us in a way because all of our players are incredibly fit, they're incredibly fast. That's a really important part of the way we play, so it shouldn't necessarily cause us many stylistic problems, but by the sounds of it, it does sound like they are going to cause us problems just in terms of quality. They're going to have a plan for how to attack this game, and Liverpool have got to be absolutely ready for that. And that is what's interesting as well. Pep Lijnders, and I'm sure the rest of the coaching staff as well, aren't just thinking about what squad would be the best one to put on the pitch from a Liverpool perspective, you know, in terms of rotation and giving players minutes and stuff like that. You've got to factor in the opponent, even at this level. You've maybe got to look at players who and think, yeah, they need minutes, but they're not suited to this kind of battle. You look at maybe James Milner and think he could potentially fill in at right back if for whatever reason we wanted him to, but if they're going to be looking to attack with pace down the wings, then maybe that isn't the right idea. And even though it would be nice to give Milner minutes and he'd be an experienced head at right back, if he's going to get caused problems by something specific in Lincoln City's Arsenal, then we simply can't afford to take that risk, and we have still got to respect the nature of the opponent. And fortunately, it sounds like Liverpool are going to do that. So team news then, we had a little bit of an update from Pep Lijnders on a few players' injuries in the press conference today. Joe Gomez, unfortunately, he missed out at Stamford Bridge, will not be training until Friday, so he won't be able to take part in the game on Thursday night against Lincoln. However, hopefully he will be perfectly fit and available for the game against Arsenal, should Jurgen Klopp want to start him on Monday night in Premier League action. Joel Matip won't be back until after the international break. He also missed the game against Chelsea and has been out of the side sort of pretty much completely since the start of pre-season. I know he got 45 minutes against Blackpool, but I think that was just to give him a little bit of minutes in his legs, and it wasn't necessarily an indication that he was match fit for competitive matches, and certainly not Premier League matches, and of course European matches coming up. But thankfully they'll be coming up, I believe, after the international break, so hopefully Joel Matip will be back for that. But there'll be no sign of him either in the game against Lincoln City. Henderson is also unavailable, but will hopefully be back for the game against Arsenal. Pep Lijnders certainly seems to suggest it was going to be taken day by day. They weren't really committing to any particular course of action on when Jordan Henderson will return to the side, but from the way away they said that he'd hopefully be back for the game against Arsenal. You'd at least think that he might be on the bench for that game, and certainly for the game against Aston Villa the weekend after that away from home, he will be available. But in the meantime, focusing just on the game against Lincoln City, there'll be no Jordan Henderson either, although personally I didn't really expect him to start this game regardless of whether he was fit or not. So we do have a little bit of a conundrum with the centre-half situation. Obviously Virgil van Dijk and Fabinho formed a formidable partnership in the game against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge on Sunday, and Fabinho certainly impressed given that he was thrown in there pretty much at the last minute, and I think it was only his second game playing at centre-half for Liverpool. Certainly a second big game, certainly second game where I think he's been in there from the start. Looking back, of course, the last time he did it was against Bayern Munich in the Champions League, so he certainly doesn't seem averse to being thrown into that position, even when it is against absolutely fantastic opposition. He didn't seem to have too many problems with Timo Werner, but I think with the Arsenal game in mind and with the fluctuating fitness of Joe Gomez, I think we might actually look to rest both of those players. It was also interesting how young centre-half Reece Williams was kept out of the squad for the EFL Trophy game on Tuesday night. Of course, the under-21s are competing in that competition alongside teams from the lower leagues. I think League One and League Two teams, plus any other sides from further up that want to throw their under-23s in, are eligible for that tournament. So Liverpool's under-21s did partake in that game. However, Reece Williams wasn't involved. So maybe that's a little bit of a clue as to whether Jurgen Klopp is thinking about him being involved in the plans. I certainly think, given the other centre-halves we've got available, you know, you look at Van den Berg, Billy Koumetio. If we're looking to get Reece Williams involved as well, then that maybe to me suggests that Virgil van Dijk and Fabinho will both be taken out of the side for this game. I know Virgil van Dijk has a fantastic injury record, and there's also a reasonably big gap between this and the Monday night game. Of course, we've got that extra couple of days rather than we might have normally had after a League Cup game for the players to recover. But I just think if you were to throw Fabinho or Virgil van Dijk into this game and they picked up an injury, you'd be absolutely kicking yourself, given the importance of the Premier League campaign and the upcoming European campaign as well. So it will certainly be interesting to see who Liverpool put in their starting 11 for centre-halves. Billy Koumetio is a little bit touch and go. Pep Lijnders said that he was facing a fitness test on the day to confirm whether he'd be available for the game, but given that he didn't really make too much of a thing about it, and given the nature of the situation we've got with centre-halves at the moment, I do think Billy Koumetio will at least get some sort of minutes in this game. So as for how I think we're actually going to line up with the starting 11 for the match, it is of course a very, very difficult one to call, because it's not like the first team where everyone's pretty much nailed on and you know kind of exactly where the hierarchy stands in terms of, you know, we've got other players coming in now who've just been signed, you've got players coming back from injuries and stuff like that, you've got fringe players, academy players, and all of them are going to be vying for spots, and I think that's why it will come down to a little bit of a horses for courses approach. I do think the club will look to think, well, who actually suits this game against Lincoln City, rather than just picking the 11 players outside of the first 11 who want the minutes the most. So in goal, I think it'll probably be Kevin Kelleher. We seem to have set up a thing where Adrian is the first choice backup goalie and the FA Cup goalie, but in the League Cup we want to give Kelleher some minutes. I entirely back that. I think he deserves a little bit of time. Maybe later on in the competition, if we come up against better teams that are starting to play better players and it gets closer to first 11s rather than reserve sides that we end up playing, I think we might see Adrian or even Alisson Becker, should we, fingers crossed, get to the final or anything like that. But for the first few rounds at least, like we did last year, I would quite like to see Kevin Kelleher in goal, so I think he will start on Thursday night. Ahead of him as the centre-back pairing, I think we're going to play it safe with injuries, and I think we're going to go with Sepp van den Berg and Billy Koumetio. Billy Koumetio obviously hugely impressive in pre-season. Sepp van den Berg, maybe not quite set it alight in the way people perhaps hoped he would when he first arrived at Liverpool. He obviously came under a huge amount of expectation. There was a lot said about how he was such a brilliant up-and-coming centre-half in the Dutch system. So hopefully we see a little bit more from him. I think he had flashes of brilliance last season. Not brilliance maybe, but he certainly looked solid at times. I'm looking back to the cup tie against Everton. I'm pretty sure he played at least some role in that and impressed, and he's done so in other games as well, like the under-23s game against Shrewsbury Town and stuff like that. So he's by no means a bad player, and I certainly think he's got more used to Liverpool's system than he was when he first started. I remember him playing against Arsenal at home in the League Cup, and he looked a little bit out of his depth, to be honest. He was just losing the ball constantly, trying to play it out from the back. But he's got better at that. He's got more confident, and I wouldn't really have any qualms with him starting the game. And the same goes for Billy Koumetio as well. The kid is clearly a fantastic, pardon me, a fantastic prospect. Pep Lijnders was bigging him up in the press conference as well, saying how excited they are to have him as a Liverpool player and to have him as part of the setup, and they're looking to develop him within, you know, the Liverpool squad. So it certainly seems like he would be needing some minutes here, and I think given his stature already, despite the fact he's 17 years old, it's not like he still needs to grow a little bit to play centre half. He's pretty tall, he's pretty strong. The same goes for Sepp van den Berg as well. Even though they're young lads, I think they are fit and healthy enough to play this kind of game. And then either side of them, I think both Trent and Robbo will get a rest. Both of them are going to need to be rested very, very carefully this season because they've played an awful lot of football over the last few years, and there is, of course, a huge demand placed on their positions in the side. So I think we go in Nico Williams at right back and Kostas Tsimikas at left back. Two players who I think are absolutely fantastic backup options. And while there is a drop-off there, it's not a drop-off stylistically in the way that it maybe would have been if you look to past games in these kind of circumstances where we would have had to draft in Nathaniel Klein or James Milner at left back, and it would definitely affect the way we tried to attack with the fullbacks. Tsimikas and Williams are almost purpose-built for Liverpool's system in that area, so it means that tactically we shouldn't lose one of the things that makes this Liverpool team so fantastic at the moment. I've just noticed that flag has fallen down again. I'm going to try and find a way to keep it up a little bit better than it has been over the last couple of videos, but in the meantime we'll just carry on with this. So that is what I think the defence is going to be. Ahead of them, I think we're going to see a start for Thiago Alcantara. Of course, he's only just arrived at Liverpool, but given he only got 45 minutes against Chelsea, and I think, you know, he probably will play against Arsenal. I'm actually expecting him to start that game as well. But with the 45 minutes against Chelsea and against 10 men as well, there was maybe a little bit less of a fitness demand on him. And I think Jurgen Klopp will just want to see him getting into the rhythm of things with Liverpool as much as possible. And he'll want to actually get a proper look at him and see whether he thinks he's good enough to start the game against Arsenal. So I think he plays as the number 6 because of how we're expecting Lincoln to defend deep. I think these are the kind of games where we can actually afford to play Thiago in the deep role. Maybe at Stamford Bridge, if they haven't been down to 10 men, or if we go away to Manchester City, you're looking at maybe someone more like Jordan Henderson or Fabinho as the number 6. Certainly when Thiago's just arrived, there's a little bit of pressure on that role, and it's something that the player has got to get absolutely spot on tactically in terms of how they position themselves, how they carry themselves, how they read the game and try and dictate the play and stuff like that. So in really, really big games, there's maybe a bit too much pressure to try and throw Thiago in before he's properly learnt the system. But for this kind of thing, you're mostly expecting him to sit deep, clean up. He's a very, very good player when it comes to interceptions as well, so he hopefully should break down some of the counter-attacks that Lincoln City will try and spring. And then mainly what you're expecting him to do is use that incredible passing range, that fantastic vision to just pick out the runs and the positioning that other people wouldn't see, and hopefully help us break down that Lincoln defence. So I think he's going to anchor the midfield, and then either side of him I think we're going to see some minutes for James Milner and Curtis Jones. There's maybe a shout for Naby Keita in there, but of course he did play a lot of the game at Stamford Bridge and will potentially start again against Arsenal. He seems to have got a little bit more of a role in the side now, Naby Keita. I don't want to get too sidetracked with what I think his position is at the moment, but it certainly seems like he's gelling into something a little bit different to what he was doing before. It seems a bit more like what Gini Wijnaldum's been tasked to do, where it's a lot more based on off the ball work and it's not expected to be flashy. We're not looking for exciting dribbles or anything like that. We're just looking for someone to dictate the play, keep the ball moving and function very well within the system. So I think Jurgen Klopp is maybe looking towards Naby Keita to start in the big games in the league and European matches, and maybe a little bit more than he maybe did in the past. And I think as a result, he probably will miss out for this game, and I think we'll see minutes for Jones and Milner. It would have been nice to see Oxlade-Chamberlain as well, but of course he has still got a long-term injury that's keeping him out of the side. And then ahead of him, I think we're going to see a very, very exciting front three. There's quite a few players that I'm really, really looking forward to seeing if they do start the game. I think Minamino will be coming in off the left. He had a great pre-season. He looks like he's really finding his feet at Liverpool so far, and you'd expect him to actually not dominate this game, but be one of the key players for Liverpool. Someone that if we need a goal, he's the lad that we're probably going to look to try and make a difference. Down the middle, I think we are going to see Diogo Jota. Pep Lijnders was absolutely raving about him in his press conference today. He said that he's had eyes on him for a while. The club have been in contact with his representatives for a couple of years now. He's represented by the same group that represents Fabinho, so there's been a good relationship there already, but they've had their eyes on Diogo Jota. It was apparently Lijnders who actually forced Jota into the transfer thinking, into that same kind of category that we held Ismail Assar in. Pep Lijnders also spoke about how he thinks Jota, in terms of pressing and his ability to close the ball down, counter and win it back and create chances that way, he actually thinks that Jota is on a par with the rest of the front three. So, you know, if he's right, if that's how good he is, and if that's how well he will fit into Liverpool's system, then we could be in for an absolute treat should Diogo Jota start down the middle in the game against Lincoln City, and I do think he will. And then completing the starting 11, I think it's going to be Harvey Elliott down the right-hand side. That does mean that quite a few players are going to miss out as well. You know, Divock Origi, who we're not quite sure whether he's going to be leaving this window or not. The same goes for Ryan Brewster. I think at least one of them is going to go, so maybe they're both being... I think they'll probably both be kept out of the side until we know exactly what's going on there. Xherdan Shaqiri as well. I'll be honest, it's hard to really tell if the guy's injured or not at the moment. He seems to be in training an awful lot, but when it comes to match day squads and everything like that, it just seems that he's never quite got the fitness to actually make it. Who really knows, to be honest, what's going on with Xherdan Shaqiri at the moment? But I think given the way he hasn't really played any roles so far this season, even in friendlies and stuff like that, I doubt we're going to see him in this match. So as a result, I think Harvey Elliott has to play on the right-hand side. I think given the form Minamino's shown, he has to be played in the front three as well. And then Diogo Jota, the new signing, if he's everything he's cracked up to be and everything that Pep Linders seems to believe he is, then I see no reason why he shouldn't be starting in this game. So that is how I think Liverpool are going to line up, and that is all for today's video. Let me know if you enjoyed the video down in the comments below. If you did enjoy the video as well, don't forget to hit the like button down there. If you're new around here, hit that subscribe button. If you want to see some of the other videos, you can check them out over there. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back to see you again very soon. Until then, bye for now.